backwards and forwards on that very eloquent and simple document. And I look at that, and I don't find any statement on education in the U.S. Constitution. Not one. That's not to say that the federal government doesn't want education to take place. But I think in the wisdom of the framers and founders of this great country, the document called the Constitution, they understood that education, which is of highest importance for the happiness of mankind, that takes place best in the local community and in the state. So what am I doing to foster or discourage education in the great state of Michigan by my efforts in Washington? That's what I have to ask myself. And so as we sat, as I sit on the House Education Committee and deal with my colleagues on the reauthorization of No Child Left Behind, something that is overwhelmingly frustrating to teachers because of the redundancy of regulation and requirement and mandate, in most cases without payment. And I'll just tell you a personal story. I'll make it as quick as possible. My daughter-in-law, before she gave birth to our twin grandsons, was a public school teacher in Cicero, Chicago. When she first took the position, which was in a special needs classroom in Cicero, she took the class because the teacher one day got up, walked out of the room, never came back. So Erin was put in that situation as a full-time substitute. She loved it. She worked with, and I could give names because she gave me these names of students that had trouble, some fifth graders, still not potty trained, very difficult, dysfunctional home situations and whatever. And Erin gave her heart and soul to it, and she loved it. And the administrator told her of the job she had done and how positive it was. And she went to the homes and visited parents, showed up on the doorstep, and all of this that went on. And she saw one little boy named Moses just saw some striking changes take place in his life. And with tears, she said, "I love this, Dad. I love this. This is exactly what I was made for." Next year, the principal gave her a full-time teaching position in that same classroom. She wasn't a substitute anymore. You can imagine my amazement when she came to me, or not my amazement, my frustration when she came to me 4 months later, after being in the classroom for 4 months as a full-time teacher, official teacher, and said, "Dad, I'm not sure I'm cut out for teaching." I said, "Erin, why? You're a magnificent teacher. You love those kids. You gave your heart and soul. You saw the results. You were excited about it." She says, "I don't have time to do that now. I've got to fill out the Illinois papers, the test requirements. I've got to fill out the Chicago papers, and I've got to fill out the No Child Left Behind reports. I don't have time to teach." And that's what we're faced with. And it frustrates me to think that there are good teachers out there that are trained. Your son wants to be a physics teacher. That ought to be something that he says, "I've got all opportunity, I'm going to do it." As opposed to hearing stories of frustration where there's over-redundancy. So in Washington, we just passed out of the House in a bipartisan fashion and sent to the Senate the so-called reauthorizing of No Child Left Behind, which basically does one specific thing. It turns back almost all of that authority to the states with the resources. If the state, like Michigan, shows us that they have a evaluation plan in place for quality education and control, and Michigan does, and it gives that authority back to the state, Board of Education, and the local school districts. That's the way it ought to work. And frankly,
as a teacher, what are your thoughts? What would you, if you could change 2 or 3 things, what would make teaching more attractive, produce a better result? What would you put on your list?
Yeah, I think currently in the state of Michigan, education's been kind of hampered in the past 5 years. I saw an article in the paper a couple days ago where half the school districts who were, as Chelsea was last year, which they're not this year, they were under some precautionary issues. I saw that half the, if you're a new school in the state of Michigan and you turn a report in with your name on it, you get and it's your first year charter school, you get a green light, that's considered passing. Even if you never do a MEP test or a standardized test. So I think the Department of Education in the state of Michigan has some inequities that I don't think they're really working with. I think what they need to do is if they decide that a good standard, a good target is an ACT test, then put that target out there and let all schools aim for it and do their best and be judged there. So I think that's what we're moving to in education is finding the target, and as a teacher, having your students learn towards that target and being graded on that target, and not so much with the ambiguities that the state of Michigan passes on. Some, no child left behind. One of the difficult things to do with education is subgroups. If you have a subgroup of 5% of your population that's not achieving, you could get a red flag for that. And that's somewhat that hampers it, but we're working through it.
Gretchen, you want to jump in?
What was the question?
I think we were talking about how would we improve education, and the question I asked Ken as a teacher, but as a parent and legislature, what would you change if you could? What 2 or 3 things?